Alright, Geordie Prepper here. Welcome to another Prepper News video. Today is the 6th of March, 2024. Firstly, we're looking at the United States clarifying its stance on the Ukraine. It's emphasizing support without troop deployment. They essentially had to do this due to Macron's statements recently about putting boots on the ground in the Ukraine. Obviously, that would be a massive red flag to Moscow. US affirmed its stance against sending troops to the Ukraine, focusing instead on providing support. Obviously, they're providing logistical support with troops on the ground. Everybody knows this. However, they're really wanting to put everything in their support package within a parcel which tries to get the least amount of response from Moscow. Zelensky is seeking tools and capabilities for the Ukrainian forces. Congressional funding is crucial to sustain US support for Ukraine's defense. There's a big argument that at the minute that there's no amount of money which is going to help the situation in the Ukraine. Regards troop deployment, the United States, through National Security Council Coordinator John Kirby, reiterated that President Biden's stance that US troops won't engage in ground combat in the Ukraine. Instead of troops, the US will provide Ukraine with the tools and capabilities. Kirby stresses the need for supplemental funding from Congress, which maintains strong leadership and support for the Ukraine, highlighting that there's a coalition of over 50 nations backing this financial effort. The statements from the White House have underscored the US's commitment to supporting Ukraine's defense efforts without deploying troops. Obviously, they train the Ukrainians on the use of these tools, or it's supplemented with actual US contractors of some sort, whether that's mercenaries or military. While French President Macron floated the idea of Western troop deployment, Allied governments quickly clarified their positions. Yeah, they had to backtrack, emphasizing support without military intervention. So it's quite a significant thing that they're clarifying this, because they're trying to shape the national response to the conflict in the Ukraine and downplaying their part in the conflict with Russia. It's reaffirming their commitment to supporting the Ukraine while avoiding direct military confrontation with Russia. Additionally, it highlights the importance of diplomatic efforts and financial support. They've had to do this backpedaling as NATO and the United States are simply not ready for the conflict with Russia. And a lot of people are making a lot of money from this war. If this actually goes into a full-blown conflict, there's no more need to send money to the Ukraine. And these avenues that they're getting these funds, this is a corrupt system. There's no doubt about it. It was recently reported that $16 billion has vanished. Where's it gone? I mean, I think we all know where it's gone. Next, we're looking at the FBI is hunting an Iranian intelligence officer, and he's linked to an assassination plot. The manhunt's basically assigned to the Miami field office, and it issued an alert seeking Majid Dasjani Farahani. He's allegedly involved in recruiting some people for some operations targeting US officials in retaliation for the 2020 airstrike killing of Iranian military leader Qasem Soleimani. So Soleimani was a commander of Iran's Quds force. He was assassinated by a US drone in January 2020. The order was issued by then President Trump, and the attack was framed as defensive action to safeguard American personnel, citing Soleimani's plans to attack US diplomats. Farahani was acting for Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Security. He's reportedly recruited some people for surveillance activities, targeting religious sites, businesses, and other US facilities. And the FBI is seeking him in connection with an Iranian plot, which they think that they've uncovered that he was in charge of. Retaliation is obviously stemming from the 2020 US airstrike. The manhunt and plot discovery is highlighting the security threats faced by the US and the delicate geopolitical balance in the Middle East. The intelligence services are going to be in heightened states, obviously. I think we're going to see the terror threat go to the maximum level. And I think it'll do that just before war, like the kinetic admission of war between Russia and NATO is broadcast. But the United States, by funding and taking sides in an area, it's unlikely that they were invited to. Just opens them up to reprisals. The scale and complexity of these attacks that are being plotted will vary. The success of them will vary if they're actually carried out. But like I said, the intelligence services will be very busy right now across the entire West. The annual Freedom Shield exercise commenced a couple of days ago, 4th of March. It's with the United States and South Korea. It's the largest joint military exercise in 5 years. And it's also happening alongside the largest NATO exercise. Coincidence? US Air Force was set to contribute various fighter aircraft during 11-day exercise. So this is really quite a short exercise compared to Operation Steadfast Defender, which is going on for months until middle of May or something. Freedom Shield focuses on combined multi-domain operations involving land, air, sea, and non-kinetic assets to enhance defensive posture. The exercise includes service members from 12 United Nations command member states, with observers from countries like Britain, Australia, France, Italy. US and South Korea reconnaissance aircraft are obviously involved in this. Global Air Hawks deployed to monitor North Korean military movements. North Korea has condemned the exercise, warned of consequences. Last year's exercise coincided with North Korean missile test launches. So it's possible in the next few days, next day or two, or during this event, we're going to see North Korean missiles being launched and tested. And North Korea is planning to launch further satellites this year as well. With this annual Freedom Shield exercise, I think we're going to see North Korea do something. They'll either fire some artillery into the sea, or they're going to fire some missiles possibly. So if you're in that region, just, keep an eye out and be prepared. So next we're looking at this gunpowder shortage, and I find this really, really interesting actually. Europe's facing a scarcity of gunpowder, crucial for artillery shells in Ukraine's defense. Macron highlighted the scarcity of the gunpowder, a critical component in lots of propellant charges, and he's saying that it's hindering efforts to supply ammunition. Now this is the same guy who's calling for boots on the ground. So if they're low on gunpowder, what are these soldiers going to fire these charges with? Gunpowder is essential for propellant. It's for artillery shells. Modern propellants are no longer in powder form, but they're composed of like rods or pellets. Europe has a limited gunpowder producers. It's leading to production challenges. They're hoping to relocate production facilities and find alternatives for raw materials, such as cotton from China. Now, they're not going to get cotton from China, and I think we're going to talk about this later, but this is really quite significant that there's this gunpowder shortage. Close economic and diplomatic ties between China and Russia have impacted the supply chain. China's halted cotton deliveries, prompting the need for innovation and alternatives. And the EU plans to support ammunition production, including gunpowder substitutes. I'm not sure, I'm not a gunpowder expert, but I'm assuming that gunpowder is going to be like the primary effective propellant. Would a substitute work as well as gunpowder? Not too sure, I have to look into that, but they've said here that China's halted the cotton deliveries. I mean, that's absolutely genius. It's basically highlighting the heavy reliance on Russia and China for resources and for products, that the consumer consumes obviously, but there is a lot of military consumption in there as well. The EU and the United States just can't do without them. And, you're going to war and interfering in areas where these countries are basically effectively your enemy. And because we've become so dependent on China and Russia, they just cut off the supply chain, and that's it. Check out this article, it goes into a lot more detail about it. So the European Commission's unveiled a defence package to boost EU arms industry. They're doing this at a time when they're out of gunpowder, which is very interesting. So they're pledging to increase the production of weapons and ammunition. They've announced a defence package allowing the bloc to transition to a war economy mode. And we're seeing that mentioned a lot more in mainstream media right now. War economy, war mode, they're starting to put that in the thoughts and the minds of people. And it's in response to Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. European Commissioner Thierry Breton introduces the European Defence Industrial Strategy, encouraging EU countries to collectively purchase more weapons from European countries and increase production capacity. He emphasised the need for the EU to adapt to the return of high-intensity warfare, advocating for a paradigm shift and increased support for the European defence industry. They're seeing this initiative as crucial for the EU's ability to respond effectively to security challenges, particularly in light of the war in the Ukraine. Nations joining NATO They pledged to spend 2% of the annual budget on defense, but there's very few of them NATO countries that actually spend that amount. And usually the ones that are spending it or more, the countries which aren't the main players. I mean, like Germany, I don't think Germany commits anywhere near what it pledges, but like Poland is doing like 5% or something. So I think it's starting to look like the United States and NATO are basically all fluff and no substance in this war. I don't think they've got any teeth at all. And I think their heavy reliance on China and Russia is effectively because all that resource and production has been cut off from them, or will be completely if it does go into full kinetic war. They've effectively shot themselves in the foot. And I think it's starting to look that way now, and the cracks are starting to appear. And we've seen the frustration and the late delivery of weapons and ammunition to the Ukraine. We've seen Zelensky getting increasingly more frustrated. And I think the gunpowder shortage is clearly a key part of the drib-drab of supplies to the war effort. So whatever stockpiles or supplies they've held in reserve of gunpowder that the United States and NATO has, it'll go into this new initiative where they want to increase production. This will only drain the reserves that they have even quicker. And inevitably, though it'll be a self-defeating initiative because this is a resource war, but it's also a tactical depletion of the United States and NATO's resources by Russia and China. And it's working really, really well. And it's accelerating as the Ukraine gets more and more desperate. So that wraps up our analysis for today. These are topics preppers need to be aware of. Stay tuned for more updates and upcoming videos. Until next time, be safe, be prepared, and check your preps.